This is the biggest risk and the biggest project I've ever taken on. And that's because this Toyota GT86 needs a full front end, and I'm trying to get it done before Auto Alex's Shed Fest in less than 2 weeks. And if you didn't think I was making it too difficult already, I had to take out a huge loan to finance this project, so I need it to work, and I'm hoping I can make big profit from it too. But the first thing I need to tackle is this rocker cover gasket, because the car didn't have the rocker cover on, apparently due to a leak, so I need to fit that before starting the engine. And because it's a boxer, there's so little space here. Because in a common inline engine, the pistons go up and down, meaning the rocker cover's on the top of the engine with loads of space to get to it. But in a boxer engine, which is in this car, the pistons go side to side, meaning both rocker covers are on the side of the engine with about an inch between those and the chassis leg. But I managed to get the new gasket on with the rocker cover, and then came across a problem I think will be reoccurring. I'm missing 2 or 3 rocker cover bolts, so I'm gonna have to get them on order, but it shouldn't be leaking oil all over my driveway now. Managed to find the remaining rocker cover bolts underneath the seats in the car. That was such a pain, there is no space to do it. I don't know how I'm gonna get the coil packs in, but I should be ready for a first start pretty soon. All I had to do was dislocate all my finger bones and I got them in. I've checked the oil as well, oil's good, so I'm gonna see if this engine starts. And if it doesn't start, I've definitely wasted all my money. Let's go. Oh. Oh my god, it runs! Oh my god, that is so loud. That is insanely loud, but she runs and it sounds, you can't hear much over the exhaust, but it doesn't sound like it's knocking or anything. Problem's idling, but there's no MAF connected, there's no air filter, there's no nothing, so that is good from me. Oh, that's insane. It actually runs. It sounds decent as well. That happiness has not lasted long. I'll show you why. If you can't tell, that is a huge puddle of oil, and this is a gaping hole in the head. So that is the rocker cover, that is the head, and that is where the oil's coming out. Looks like I've been burnt again. I'm gonna have to buy a head because this is worth nothing now. This job just got a lot more difficult. And to fix the hole in the engine, I'm gonna have to take the engine out of the car. So, with no plan or idea what I was doing, I started preparing for my first engine removal. So I started disconnecting all the wires, all the coolant pipes, all the AC lines, fuel lines, and basically anything that connected this engine to the rest of the car. And any holes where a pipe was that I didn't want dirt getting into, I stuffed some kitchen roll in there, and then I just have to disconnect the AC lines from the car and get rid of these sway bars because they're gonna be in the way when I try and pull the engine up out of the car. This time crunch is insane. I've literally got 2 weeks to take the engine out, fix it, put it back in, rebuild the full front end. Someone else took apart the front, so I have no idea how I'm going to figure out how it goes back together again, but we've got no option. If it fails, this is a £3 grand paperweight on my driveway, so I have to build it. And after an extra check to make sure there's nothing else connecting the engine to the car, I found a couple more plugs that I had to undo. These are the stupidest wire clips ever. You have to like pinch the sides to get them out. Stupid. I struggled with those for longer than I'd like to admit, but after getting a few more pipes and vacuum lines, a friendly neighbour told me that I'm actually not supposed to be working on cars on the driveway, never mind rebuilding one. So I was nervous about that and decided to put the wing back on the car to make it a little bit more normal looking. That's not going anywhere. And with a plan to take out this engine tomorrow, I started stripping off everything that I don't need. So starting off with the auxiliary belt on the front, and then taking off the alternator, the bracket that sits on, the AC compressor, and with a bit of help, I tried taking off the pulley from the water pump, but without an impact wrench or any way to stop it spinning, there was no way of doing it. So I had to leave that on for now. But it is gonna have to come off eventually because I need to get to these bolts behind it to get the timing chain cover off. More on that later though, because now it's time to wrestle with this crank pulley, and I thought I was quite strong until this, but I locked the car in 6th gear, so in theory the engine didn't move, and it took a lot of swinging and a 4-foot scaffolding pipe, but I managed to crack the pulley bolt off, and I'll just leave that loose for now. And with that, I think the engine is ready to come out. As far as I know anyway. The only thing connecting the engine to the car now is a couple of bell housing bolts underneath the car, so I'm going to jack her up, get the car on axle stands, pull this engine and get it back in the same day. Then, once I've fitted everything back to the engine, I'm back to square one. After looking in the boot and finding all of the parts, there's actually a lot of new parts to replace the broken ones, so I've got a new wave of motivation. I actually feel like I can do this now. Also, I've been to the Toyota dealership and they have been so helpful. They've sent me so many schematics, diagrams, exploded diagrams, so I almost have like an IKEA instruction manual on how to build the car. But let's get this engine out and then start building back the front end. But for all these late nights that I know I'm going to have to do to get this car finished, I'm going to need to stay energized and hydrated. But I hate how most energy drinks and soft drinks leave your teeth furry, they're unhealthy, they cost a fortune, and they give you a big sugar crash about an hour after you've drank. So I was really skeptical when Holly sent me out some drinks to try. But after trying one of the 42 drinks included in the starter set, mixing it with 500 millilitres of water, whacking some ice in and shaking it up, I was really surprised by how much I loved the flavour. They've got no bad ingredients like sugar, taurine, artificial colourings or flavourings, no aspartame, whatever that is. And ignoring all of that, it's just really tasty. And once you've tried the starter set and found your favourite flavours, lemon and sour cherry for me, you can pick up a tub of one flavour which works out at less than 65p per 500 millilitres of drink. And you can choose between this plastic bottle or this very nice metal shaker. The hydrate flavours are great after working on cars or doing other hobbies. To replace you with electrolytes, minerals and obviously water to prevent cramps, headaches and fatigue. To make it even better, I've managed to get you guys £5 off your first order with code JOSH5 or 10% off your full order with code JOSH. And honestly, I know you might be skeptical like I was. I genuinely didn't think I'd like any of this stuff. But if you pick up the starter set, I guarantee you won't be disappointed. And it helps the channel out so I can get more videos out for you guys. And you end up getting a really good product, so it's a win-win for everyone. Back to that piece of scrap that I just bought. Very bad news. Today I'm supposed to be taking the engine out and putting it back in again, but the weather is absolutely horrendous and there's no way I can do it in this, so I keep thinking to myself, I don't know why I've taken this project on. I've got 1 week left. How I'm going to do this, I've no idea. But by the grace of God, Alan from Cutting Edge Mechanics has very, very kindly lent me his unit for the weekend and made this project possible again. So tomorrow, I'll be in there early, getting this engine out, fixing it and putting it back in. Then I should have a running and driving GT86. It's game time. Let's get this engine out. Sun plugs back on. Gonna set up this engine mount, support the engine, then get under, support the gearbox and undo all the bell housing bolts. Then it's just the engine mounts to take off and the engine should slide right out in about 20 minutes since being here. After spending far too long looking around where to actually attach the engine crane, I've decided to go for the back mount and this front idler pulley because I don't have the correct bolt to go in the actual designated hole. I don't know if this is right, but it should work and I'm going to drop it on a tyre pretty much straight away, so fingers crossed. And once I've got the crane connected and it's supporting the weight of the engine, I can get rid of these engine mount nuts. So in theory, the engine just pulls straight up, no problem. But I'm going to have to pry the engine away from the bell housing on the gearbox to separate the two. And it did take quite a lot of prying, but as usual when you're working on cars, if you just keep going at it, after enough time... Oh, we're out. We are out, I think. Come on. First engine ever removed. Progress. Bit worried I've damaged one of the cam sensors, but it's right on the front of the engine, so if I have, it's not a huge deal to fix when I get back in. But other than that, I didn't forget to take anything off. That went surprisingly smoothly, I'll be honest. Now it's time to get everything off this front cover and fix this hole in the head. So I thought this was the head, but it's actually not. This here is the cam carrier, which is basically what holds the cams in the head instead of using individual cam caps. So I've got a new one of them. We'll take the rocker cover off, take the cam carrier off, the new one will go in. I am a bit scared of seeing this, to be honest, because if there's anything wrong with even one of the valves or valve springs, anything like that, I'm in for a world of pain. So here goes. Didn't take long to find the problem with this. One rocker's loose and the other one is completely missing. And these rockers are what separate the valves from the camshaft. Instead of the camshaft lobes pushing directly down on the valve, which would have a lot of wear on the camshaft,
These rockers have a bearing inside, meaning the cams can push down smoothly without ruining the camshaft or the valves. So obviously, if one of these are missing, the valve's not going to open, and if one of these is in the wrong place, it's going to cause a lot of damage. Which makes this whole situation a bit strange. It's obviously thrown a rocker out of the casing, which is weird. Maybe one was loose, and in the crash it became dislodged, and then the cam spit it out. Or maybe this was an insurance job, and someone didn't want to pay for the engine to be fixed or replaced, so they drove it into a wall or something to get the insurance money. I don't know, but thank God. Have not dropped a valve, no snapped springs or anything. This is the best case scenario. I've got spare rockers, so all I need to do, take this cam carrier off, replace the broken bits, cam carrier back on, engine back in the car. But to get the cam carrier off, I first had to remove the timing chain cover, and to do that, I had to unplug all the wire and loom from any sensors from the front of the timing cover, and some things bolted to the cam carrier itself, like this metal cover. And then I could finally start undoing all the timing cover bolts.
Luckily this is coming off real easy actually.
But I spoke too soon, because after trying to pry it off for about 20 minutes, it wasn't going until I realised that 2 bolts were still in, hidden by the catalytic converter. So once I cracked those 2 bolts off and unwound them...
Oh, I thought I'd snapped that bolt. I really thought I'd snapped it. Oh, that is the sound of relief.
What a lucky escape, I was so worried there. But after a small amount of trying to pull this timing chain cover off, it finally came and I could reveal inside the engine.
Yes. Come on. Oh, heavy twat.
And now, just to help myself out, I'm going to rotate the engine just to make sure that all the timing parts match up. So the woodruff key on the crank, on the black chain link, and these 2 bits on the cams pointing each other. Then it's just a case of loosening this chain tensioner, and that way I can put a pin in it to make sure it stays locked down, and that gives us enough slack on the chain to remove it from the engine. And finally, the reason why we're even in here, the broken cam carrier gets taken off.
After far too long, everything that needs to come off is off, so now it's just, for me, the time-consuming job of cleaning all the old gasket off, making sure everything's clean, and then putting it back together. The only other time-consuming thing is going to be setting these valve clearances, which is a case of putting the cam carrier on, checking the valve clearances, taking it off if it needs adjusting. But let's build this. I've got this grease to pop on the followers just to try and make the rockers stay on whilst I'm mounting the cams. Let's go.
And once I've got all of these brand new second-hand rocker arms back in, the new cam cover without a big hole in the side can go on and get bolted up so I can check these valve clearances. But this is when I started to find the really bad problems that I wasn't going to be able to fix today.
I don't know what I've done wrong, but something is very, very off. And it is bad news. The new rockers that came with the new cam carrier are very different to the rockers in my old head. Now, I've put all my old ones back in and the valve clearances are about right, except
for the new rocker that I had to fit because the old one's fallen out. The gap between the camshaft and the valve is so big that it would just fall out if I left it like this.
So to give me a clearance of 0.13, I have to make up 2.85 mil somewhere. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'll have to figure it out one way or another. After a lot of Googling, I think the pre-facelift valve train is a little bit different to the facelift valve train, so that's why the rockers are different, and there's no way I can get my hands on one, and this car needs to be out of this unit on Monday, so I'm gonna have to figure something out. In the meantime, whilst I'm thinking about it, I'm gonna start cleaning up the front of the engine, ready for the timing cover to go on, because I need to get rid of all of the old silicone so that the new one sticks and makes a good seal. It's the next day. I am surviving on about 4 hours sleep for the past week trying to get this done. But we have clearance. Now, I'm gonna get absolutely destroyed in the comment section for this, but I have put 2 washers underneath the follower inside the head to raise up the follower. So the only problem with this is the follower won't come out, that's 100% sure. Now this will mean the angle where the cam is hitting the rocker isn't gonna be right, but to get me out of the unit today, it's gonna have to do. I have no other option. Time to get this back in the car.
And so I checked the valve clearances on all the other valves just to make sure they were right. And on one of the valves, I just needed to grind a little bit off one of the lash caps to get the correct clearance, because the thickness of this decides the gap between the valve and the cam.
So it's time to take the cam carrier off for the very last time. Put some grease on it.
and then torque all those bolts up to spec.
Finally, some good news, let's go.
And now I can finally get the timing chain back on and release the timing chain tensioner.
Timing is set, cam carrier is in, all the clearances are good. Just to get this timing chain cover on now.
But first goes on the rocker cover again, and I spun the engine just to make sure that the timing was right and there was no valves touching any pistons.
Right, so I've cleaned this front engine cover as much as I can bear to. It's the most painful thing in the world. It's time to lay this bead of silicone on, mate it up, torque it down and pray to God that this doesn't leak. Possibly the most stressful thing I've ever done. Everything's torqued up. The only thing left now to do is get it in the car and see if it leaks. Let's do everything we did before, but in reverse.
And as you saw earlier, that means connecting all the hangers, brackets, and the wiring loom to the timing chain cover, and then this little thing that goes on the end of the crankshaft, it can only go in one way, so I know it's right.
I don't think this is gonna seal at all.
And then on goes the crank pulley, which is connected to the aux belt, and that drives the alternator, the aircon compressor, all of that sort of stuff. And then returning the pulley onto the water pump with an impact, which is obviously very important because that flows coolant around the engine.
It's time to put the engine in. I think I've done everything. I hope I haven't missed anything. Let's get this engine in and hope and pray when I start it nothing is dreadfully wrong. I can get the car out of the unit today, and that was what I was most stressed about. So again, thank you, Alan.
And because I'm broke, I've not got much to offer him to say thank you for helping me out, but I'm going to leave a link in the description. And please, Alan is always helping other people out, and I'd love to give him something in return. So if you could donate a quid or even 50p just to say thank you to Alan. Without him, there is no way that I would have been able to finish this project, not even start it. And then I'm going to post a short with his reaction to giving him some money.
Bad news. I'm trying to be positive and think I saw it before I got it in the car, but so obviously I've done something majorly wrong. The rocker cover's leaking, and I think the cam carrier is leaking at the bottom as well. Just when I got the engine in, I noticed a puddle on the floor, so I took the engine out, taking the rocker cover out, and the rocker cover is definitely leaking. I'm 50% sure the cam carrier is leaking, and it's about 20 to 10, so I have like 6 hours. So I've resealed the rocker cover. My only option is to wait for this sealant that I've used to dry to try and stop this leak and get it back in. I don't know how bad the cam carrier is leaking, if it is. Maybe it'll get me to Shedfest, who knows. That's pretty stupid, but it's 11 PM. This car needs to be out of the unit by tomorrow 6 AM, so yeah. Broken engine back in the car, back to square one. Well, there we are.
And despite how deflated, drained and exhausted I was, I didn't want to let Alan down, and I needed to get this out of the unit before Monday morning.
So it's 2 AM, gearbox is mounted and the engine mounts are mounted up. Gonna get the car out of the unit really early tomorrow morning and see what we're gonna do from here, because it is hemorrhaging oil.
And after a sleep, one thing I knew I could do to try and prevent any oil leaks was replace this old crankshaft seal with a brand new one. So I just tapped that in with a hammer and a socket that went round the whole thing. Then crank pulley goes back on.
So with that front crank seal done, I'm gonna fill it up with a bit of oil just to see if it starts falling out, and if it doesn't, we'll go ahead and start the car.
And after looking, I'm pretty sure that wasn't leaking anymore. Obviously, it's hard to tell with the engine not running, but I got on to getting all of the old pulleys on, and then once they were on, I got the bracket for the alternator, connected the alternator, and then moved on to the AC condenser. And obviously I'm not worried about having aircon, but it's one of the pulleys for the auxiliary belt, so it has to be on there. Then I made sure that the alternator was wired up correctly. I finally got the auxiliary belt on that powers the alternator and the AC compressor, and on the top of the engine I got some of the intake pipes connected and made sure to connect these two ground straps underneath the engine.
Now luckily that didn't take too long, and I think it's ready to start. I'm going to check all the coolant pipes and everything, and then we're ready to start it. I am terrified, but let's go.
And just because I don't want to be worried about running it for too long and overheating the engine, I'm going to quickly just connect the hoses for the radiator and fill the cooling system up with water.
She doesn't look a lot, but in theory, if this goes well, this should be a running and driving car now. Only thing to do is keep my fingers crossed put the battery on and get it started. Subaru have put in a oil priming feature as well. I think it's called like a flood release or something like that. So if the engine gets flooded with petrol, you can drain it out. So all I've got to do is foot on the clutch, foot all the way on the accelerator, and it should not spark and not fuel and just turn the engine over to prime everything with oil before starting. That's good. Now I'll check for any oil leaks quickly. Is that leaking fuel? Right, I've tightened up them fuel lines just in case. Send it. It's going. Didn't like being revved. So there's a bit of smoke coming down from the manifold where the first oil leak was, so I'm not that worried just yet about that. It was misfiring a little bit, but I'm not too surprised. Half of it's disconnected, there's no MAF sensor. I think it might be missing a lambda as well at the back, I'm not too sure. So I'm gonna leave it a little bit, get everything cooled down, and go again. I am excited, I can't help not be. After all that work, I've got it running. But whether it's leaking or not is still to be seen. So I think I'll need to get a MAF to plug in to see if it runs properly. I'm gonna try it again, see how it sounds, see if I see any oil leaks. We might actually get it to Shedfest, who knows?
But then I noticed this, and although I kind of knew I was going to have to take the engine out again to replace that rocker,
I honestly don't know why I was so hopeful about it not leaking oil, but that is definitely an oil leak. So we're pretty much back to square one. This is the car that keeps on giving, I'm so frustrated. I know it was going to leak, but anyway, I'm going to wait till everyone on this industrial park has gone home, get some cardboard, leave it running so I can try and find out exactly where is leaking the oil. And then it looks like at some point in the future, maybe this weekend, engine's going to have to come out and I'm going to have to get some proper Toyota sealant and give it another go at sealing it up. And whilst I'm in there, at least I can replace that rocker with the proper one and get my horrible washer set up out of there.
but then after I started it for the last time,